Hey guys, welcome to the JST Q&A. Thanks for being here. I'm Al Levy, and I'm with Joey Sturgis, and we are happy to be hanging out with you guys on this Saturday. Make sure you stick around because we're going to be doing some cool giveaways in a little while. But for now, we'll just start with answering whatever questions you give us in the chat room below. And make sure that you start asking these questions at a good clip because there's a delay between when we speak and when you guys hear it and when you actually answer the questions. So try to give us more questions than we probably know how to handle. And we've got one. So Devin Schmidt is asking, in what situation do you find multiband distortion most useful? Additionally, what frequency ranges do you feel benefit the most from a little distortion / exciting in a master?
It's a good question. I would say the mid-range is really nice for saturating when you're talking about the master bus or the mix bus or whatever. As far as like multiband distortion, I don't know. I know that you use some multiband distortion.
Yes,
plugins.
I use Saturn.
Saturn?
Yeah.
So I use a multiband exciter, which I mean is kind of the same thing, but just not really as intense.
They can't hear you. Speak up.
Hello, check.
Joey, you're too quiet.
Hello?
Hey guys, is this better? We just
it's
turned.
muted.
Oh,
There we go.
all right.
Now we're in business.
Now we're in business.
Sorry about that, guys. Okay, yes, it does make sense to use some saturation on the mix bus. I tend to do it in the mid-range because that's really the area that's nice to heat up. I don't think you want to heat up like the low end or saturate the low end.
Fart City.
Yeah. Now, as far as like using a multiband distortion, I don't really do that very much. I like to use multiband like harmonic exciters. The main difference between those is that they kind of try to do it, I guess, in a more lighter sense, like simulating tape, for example. You're not going to get a distorted guitar tone out of tape simulation because it's just a low amount of distortion. So,
Well, you know what? Actually, we all, and I'm saying everyone in the chat room and everyone that works on metal these days does, that's, I guess, a manual multiband distortion is the bass trick, where you separate the high and the low and distort the high and don't touch the low. I mean, that's essentially what a multiband distortion allows you to do.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, so you guys might already be doing multiband distortion type things without realizing that that's just exactly what a multiband distortion unit will allow you to do. So Ferna471 is asking, I have a question. I wanted to know if there's any tip you can give for learning to use Cubase. In my audio school, I have to learn to use it, but it's difficult because I use Reaper usually. Let me take this first, because I've had to learn like 5 different DAWs.
Yeah, you're currently switching over.
Yeah. Well, switching back, actually, because I started on Cubase, but that was a long time ago. It was like SX version 1. So, ancient history. But I had to learn Pro Tools on the job when I first got in with Audio Hammer. I didn't have any experience with Pro Tools. I had used Cubase, Nuendo, Digital Performer up till then, and I learned how to use Pro Tools on an August Burns Red record, just like right away. And really, the only way to learn a DAW is to use it all the time. So if you're having to use it in class, find ways to add maybe 3 more hours of usage on non-class related stuff. Look up tutorials, but more than anything, just make yourself use it so that you get comfortable with it. That's the big thing. Besides that, I am switching to Cubase now, so I'm about to go through the same thing, and I can tell you that having done this multiple times before, what I'm going to do is just start using it. And luckily, I have Joey and Joel to talk to, who are the Cubase gods, but even if I didn't have them to talk to, I would just immerse myself in it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. One of the best ways to learn pretty much anything is just throw yourself into the deep end. Maybe you're struggling with compressors. Well, just start using them, make mistakes on them, and you'll learn. Same thing with the DAW, really. Open it up and try to make a song with it, and see what kind of hurdles you come across, and whichever problems you run into, maybe you can go online and search it around, or even ask us. I mean, we're actually pretty accessible online, and especially on Facebook. And if you're a part of our private producers club, you can actually post questions in there and we'll answer them, because you're a valuable member of our community to us. And if you want to join that community, all you have to do is join Nail the Mix. Just go to nailthemix.com and click join today, and you'll get access to that private community where you guys can literally reach us and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this random Cubase problem. I don't understand it. And more often than not, our community will jump in before we can even get there, but we'll be there to help you out as well. So,
we're in there every day.
Yeah, every day.
Multiple times a day, too. So, Marius is asking, do I always have to cut the mids to get a good metal guitar tone? Wouldn't that depend on how many mids there were in it to begin with?
Yeah, everything is relative, and that's the most important thing to understand about audio, is that even though somebody can show you a trick or give you an idea on how to EQ something, it's not necessarily the final truth, because you could have a guitar tone that already has a lack of mids, or maybe you have a guitar tone that has a fine amount of mids. It really just depends. It's all relative to your situation. I personally think that the secret to a good metal guitar tone is having the mids figured out, not scooped, but figured out. And what that really means is just having years of experience of hearing guitar tones and knowing when there's a lack of something or there's too much of something. And that really just comes with time. A lot of listening, a lot of referencing, and a lot of time.
Also, I feel like if you're using amp sims, you're probably going to end up having to do a lot of EQ no matter what. But I've been involved in situations where it was kind of a competition with amped tones to see who could get tones that required no EQ at all. But the thing is, with an amp, you're dealing with so many more variables that make a huge difference. Like, I know that switching the mics on an amp sim makes a difference, but not quite the same as moving a real microphone. Like, a millimeter of change drastically will alter the guitar tone. So,
well, the thing that I think is so interesting right now, and I want you guys to know about this, is that we're living in a time period where there's a robotic mic positioning tool that you can buy.
It's $300,
and you can really learn so much about like sonics and guitar tones in particular when you have a tool like that, where you can move the microphone like tiny little bits and you can hear it while it's happening. Those, what I like to call, I guess, analog or natural EQ tools. And like you said, the longer you spend on getting your source tone to be almost as perfect as possible is just going to put yourself in such a good position when you're mixing. And then later you can say, okay, we got really, really close. We need just like 2 dB of like extra treble to really poke out. Then it makes your life so much easier. So I would say don't settle for an okay tone. Really try to strive for a great tone to start with.
Agreed. So Etrugul is asking, do you have any suggestions to mix kick and bass for sit in the mix?
Well, I guess the famous problem here, right, is that they're in the same frequency range, right? So if you have a kick that has a lot of low end and you have a bass guitar that has a lot of low end, you kind of need to choose which part of the low end each one's going to take up, and you can really just kind of do that with carving. You can also do it with like EQ carving, and you can also do it with side chaining, so that the low end of the kick drum maybe goes down in volume when the bass kicks in, or vice versa, depending on which one you want to prioritize. And it really kind of depends on your style of music. If you're talking about something that I would do, which I'm famously known for metalcore and stuff like that, I typically use EQ carving to get that result. So I'll take out like anything between like 100 to 200 hertz from the kick drum, and it lives somewhere around like 60 to 80 hertz, and then the bass is above that. But you can also do it the other way around, and it really also depends on the tuning. If you're in drop F sharp or drop F or something like that, your bass is probably not going to be in drop F. It's probably going to be in a register above that. So kind of just depends.
Okay. Here's a loaded question. Douglas Hammerstein is asking, and I guess this is a good one to clarify. Joey, you don't use any acoustic treatment. Is this mostly because you work with values rather than only listening? I guess he's asking if it's because you mix with your eyes instead of your ears.
Well, not necessarily true. I mean, I don't really mix with my eyes. It might look like I do, but if you check it out, if you check me out on like Nail the Mix or something, you'll know. I mean, there's some values based philosophy in there, but it's also heavily based on hearing. And if you actually check out the JST plugins, most of them don't have very many meters because we want you to be using your ears and not your eyes. So as far as like my acoustic treatment, I guess I've just always landed in lucky spots.
Yeah, I feel like the reason he's asking that is because we always tell people to treat their rooms and all that stuff, but then
But then
they
I
watch
don't have
these
a treatment.
videos and there's no treatment. So it's like, well, what the hell? Like, does he just not listen? Like, what is that? But I can tell you, at least in this room, and I've said it before, this room is a diffusion chamber, basically. Because of all the surfaces, there's great diffusion all over the place. All the wood, all the random stuff going on, the unfinished ceiling, like all that stuff is just working, and it's not a square room either. For some reason, it just sounds good in here. Also, I just I feel like it's one of these things where like Steve Vai, the guitar player, has fingers that are longer than most people. Like he's got massive hands, which is probably something to do with why he got so good compared to his peers. And if someone else with normal hands wanted to try to do Steve Vai type stuff the way Steve Vai did it, that might not be the best approach because Steve Vai was working with a different set of built-in tools that other people weren't. And if this works for you, which is great, but I think for most people, it's probably a better idea to treat their rooms.
Yeah, well, this is the other side of the coin is that a lot of you probably haven't been in like NRG studios and known what it sounds like when you're in a room that's been tuned. I have, and I kind of know the difference of what that's like. On the same side, though, I feel like I've landed in spots where everything just worked out. And I don't know, maybe that's the luck factor. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. When I was buying this house, for example, I was looking at this area and I was like, you know what? I think this area would actually make a lot of sense for a studio. Just taking a look at it. So I wouldn't have bought the place if I walked into the basement and it was like an acoustic chamber trap of some sort. So I'm making smart decisions, but I'm also landing in positions where I set everything up and I'm like, wow, I was right. It does sound good in here.
And you've got multiple options in this house for a control room too.
Yeah.
Like you could have made one in the spare bedroom or other places that may not have worked out quite so well.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the drum room at my place. There's no treatment needed. It just worked. And sometimes you just find a place that works and you're good.
My first drum room that I owned myself, which was basically the dining room of my house in Indiana, did need treatment, and we did have treatment in there. We put up panels and diffusers and stuff. We put diffusers in the ceiling. We put absorption panels on the walls because there was a flutter echo in there. So I'm not immune to it either. I mean, everyone needs treatment. Your space has got to sound nice.
Andrew Page is asking, when using amp sims, I seem to always end up with a thin tone that is super harsh. I use a DI box and control my input gain to maximize the amp. What am I doing wrong?
What amp sims are you using?
Yeah,
It would
good
be my
question.
first question. But let's just assume you have high quality amp sims that don't suck. If you're still getting thin tones, maybe it's how you... I mean, this is one of the things that I think a lot of people suffer from, and I want to call it like soloitis or something, where you're spending hours and hours trying to tweak something, listening only to that element. And then when you throw it into the wolves with all the other elements in your mix, your drums, your bass, your vocals, blah, 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 now all of a sudden, where's my guitars go? They sound so thin. That's because you spent too long focusing on the negative mid-range or something, and you scooped it too much, and now it doesn't have any weight to stand up against other instruments. So you really got to balance that, right? You want to spend a little bit of time on the tone hearing it by itself, but then you want to throw it into a mix and be like, okay, where do I stand now? And kind of just bounce back and forth between those two.
All right, so maybe we should do a contest now.
Okay, cool.
You want to tell them about the finality one? I'll give them the link. Why don't you tell them what to do?
Yeah, so, all right, guys, we're giving away some stuff just because you're here, and we appreciate you being here.
We love you.
We love you. So here's how you enter. We're going to give away a copy of Finality Advanced, and if you would like to win that, here's what you have to do. Go to joeysturgistones.com/share and click on the one that says Share on Facebook. And when you click on that link, a little window is going to pop up, and you can type in anything you want to say about us. You can say something good, something bad. We don't care. Just say whatever you think about us. And include the hashtag Joey Sturgis Tones so that we can find you.
If you don't include that hashtag, we won't know you did this, and then we won't be able to pick a winner.
Exactly. And we're going to give you guys about maybe 5-10 minutes. And after that time, we'll go back and check, and we'll pick one, and you'll have a copy of Finality for free. Today. We'll actually give it to you today.
Yeah, and again, that's joeysturgistones.com/share. Click the Share on Facebook link. Write whatever you want about us, good or bad, and include the hashtag Joey Sturgis Tones. And we'll pick one of you guys to win Finality Advanced in the next 5-10 minutes. So go do that right now.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and we'll keep answering some questions. Christian Westick is asking, what situations do you choose tape, tube saturation, etc.? Does it come down to taste or a more technical reason?
I think it comes down to taste, but
I think so too.
If there's a technical approach to it, it really would I think it would be more about what people have just commonly accepted, right? Like I think more often than not, people kind of do tube on vocals, or and then like tape on drums. Like those are just kind of like things that have survived the times, but there's not really any rhyme or reason to it other than just maybe it's always sounded good in those scenarios. I don't know.
The thing that I feel though is that the emulations aren't really like the real thing. It's not that they're better or worse; they're just different. So the tube saturations don't sound like real tube saturation. They just sound like whatever that plugin sounds like. So I feel like people just need to experiment and figure this out for themselves. Like it's not going to actually sound like tape. Tape sounds like tape. Plugins sound like whatever they're programmed to sound like, but they're never going to sound like the same thing. So I think if you want to call it tape and tube saturation just because you're human and you like to categorize things, cool. But you should always just keep in mind that it doesn't actually sound like the thing it says it sounds like.
I would say...
And again, that's not a value judgment.
It's got the vibe, it's got the gist. Like when it's, the tape versus tube. The tube is going to have the gist of what the tube sound is, and the tape's going to have like the gist of the tape sound. But, unless you have the ability to access the real thing, you're probably never going to know that. But... we're living in a digital age now. Everyone's converting, even the top dogs. I mean, there was recently a big...
Schweppes.
Yep, Schweppes just went to digital. So, I don't know, man. It's not necessarily, don't go out of your way to go find a tape.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, that if they go looking this up, like looking for technical reasons, and start reading about
might not be
analog
applicable.
gear, it's not applicable.
Yeah.
It's like that plugin, like for instance, the Slate tape machine one sounds phenomenal. It doesn't exactly sound like a tape machine, but it does its own thing and it's really good.
Yeah.
Waves has one as well, which is also pretty good. Doesn't really sound the way I've heard tape machines sound, but it's still good.
I think ultimately it is taste, but the point I'm trying to get across is that, the reason why people even go after the tape sound is because of what the machines used to do. And it was like not necessarily by design.
No, it's actually by mistake.
By
According
mistake,
to some brilliant gear makers I know, who know a lot more about this stuff than me. I don't know much at all. They said that the cool stuff about tape was the limits of it was due to the limits in technology back then. It's a happy accident that, of course, the idea would be to have no noise and no distortion, right? Like that's what they were trying to get towards, but it was a newer technology and it had some problems, but it just happened to be a happy accident.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard at least.
And yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing that you have to understand too is that the idea behind making something really rich and enhanced sounding and full and dense is adding crap to it. Because once things are super transparent, clear, sterile, perfect, they sound not full, rich, enhanced, I guess. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the balance, right? You can have it completely transparent, but now it sounds, very thin and almost robotic. And then you can, all the way on the other spectrum, it's super dirty guitar sound with the microphone that's distorting and stuff. So it's kind of everything's going to be a balance between those two end points.
So Dennis Landry is asking, recording drums, is it okay to use mic clips attached to the toms? Let me just stop the question now. No, don't use clips attached to the drums, please.
I have done that though, so if you've seen me do that, don't hate yourself and don't hate me.
Don't hate yourself, but if it's if you've got no other choice, then you've got no other choice. But try not to do that because they'll shake and stuff.
Yeah, you can get good tones with a clipped-on mic, but the thing you have to understand is that there's some what do you call it? Machine noise or something like that associated with it.
Like, there's synthetic vibrations.
Synthetic vibrations. It's attached to the tom, which the tom is shaking. That's how the tom even makes any noise in the first place. And then that translates down into the microphone body, which makes the microphone shake and then causes the diaphragm to shake. And this is on top of the sound waves that are hitting the diaphragm. So you're getting a little bit of interference there.
Yeah, and then also the fact that it's vibrating moves the mic. So eventually, if you do a whole record or something, you could end up with a whole different positioning than the one you started with. So again, it's not like kill yourself and don't record drums like that. But yeah, don't do that. But it's preferable to use stands.
Let's pick our winner.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here.
You guys are awesome for tuning in, by the way. Thank you. This is great.
Let me see who had the coolest plug in the comment. Someone write something funny.
Hopefully someone wrote something really negative. Let's pick that person.
Yeah, I'm looking for the hate.
I mean, we are on YouTube right now, so that's where the best hate lives. By the way, you guys should check out Rob Scallon? Mm-hmm. His channel. He just did a Metal Ad-Lib 6, and it's really hilarious. I just watched that the other day. It's so funny. He made a song out of YouTube hate comments, and it's amazing.
Let's go with Pascarella Recordings. He said, bass tones for days. These tones I'm making are insane, and I can see that he's using either Finality Lite or the demo.
Okay, cool. So he needs advanced.
Yeah, Pascarella Recordings.
If you're watching, and we'll message you on Facebook right now.
Yeah.
But if you're watching, send us an email to joeysturgistones@gmail.com, and we'll hook you up with a free copy of Finality Advanced.
I'm just writing to him right now on Facebook.
Cool. And the next thing that we'll give away is going to be Producer Bundle 2. And we're going to do this on Twitter. So I'll tell you right now how to enter. So you're going to go to the same URL. It's going to be joeysturgistones.com/share and click on the one that says share on Twitter. Just make sure that hashtag is in there, the Joey Sturgis Tones hashtag. And in the next 10 minutes or so, we will pick one person to win a copy of Producer Bundle 2. And Producer Bundle 2 is awesome because it really...
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, it includes like our core plugins that will really just jumpstart your creation process. If you're looking for a nice little pack of plugins, and it's really not expensive, it's around, was it $249 right now, I think.
Yeah, and it's got a lot in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I don't know. When you get a starter pack for another plugin company, and I don't want to talk trash about plugin companies, but most of the time they're above the $300 mark, and maybe even up into the thousands in some of these. And so I think that this is just really a bang for your buck, and it'll get you jump started into creation. That's really what JST is all about anyway, is to help you guys make great music.
And there's also tools in there that you normally won't find on some other starter packs. And also, it's a great complement to stock plugins that you'll find on your DAW. Like, for instance, in your DAW, you're generally going to have good graphical EQs, for instance, decent reverbs, things like that. Like, most stock reverbs are actually pretty good. I know you like the Cubase one. I've used the stock Pro Tools one forever. I know you like the Cubase stock EQ. The Pro Tools stock EQ is good too. But stuff that doesn't normally come with plugins is like Sub Destroyer, for instance.
You don't get a badass compressor either.
No, like Gain Reduction Deluxe. No, you don't get good amp sims either. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that'll really help you get to work that won't come with your DAW. Whereas with a lot of other starter packs, you get the same exact thing that you already have. Like, you already have a few graphical EQs more than likely. Do you really need a bunch more just to get started? What you do probably need is good amp sims, though. Really good compressors, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So let's take the next question. Victor Campos, and this is interesting because we just did a Nail the Mix about this. Can you tell in what situation do you prefer boosting EQ, like smiley face, over subtracting EQs?
So, I love this question because there's so many schools of thought on EQ, and I don't want to say any of them are right or wrong. They all have valid pros and cons and arguments to make them great or bad. But sometimes I like to just approach a song with a concept. I might approach a song and say, all right, when I mix this song, I'm going to try to use mostly additive EQ as much as I can. And a great example of that is the song Restart by Chunk No Captain Chunk. If you ever heard that song, or maybe you were on Nail the Mix and you watched me mix it, you'll know that actually worked very well for that song. And it's the type of song where it's really heavy, but it's also really melodic. It's played on drop A sharp baritone guitars, so everything's tuned very low. We're adding a lot of mid-range and treble to the guitars. We're adding some, lots of treble to the snare and to the kick, as you normally do. And we're not really taking anything away from those sounds. And that's a perfectly good strategy to mix a song, so long as you know how the tools work and how to use them to your advantage. I think that saying, additive EQ only is a really negative thing. Like, that's not something that really makes sense. There's going to be times where you need to carve something out. And if you impose a rule set that's just too limited, you're going to not get the great results that you're after. So while I say additive EQ is a sort of a theme or an idea or an approach to a song, you're still going to do some carving. I mean, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, right? You put some drums in a room, hit a snare, get a weird ring frequency, you carve it out. But then everything else is additive adjustments. Similarly, though, you can approach a song the opposite way. You could say, I'm going to use mostly subtraction. And you can get good results that way, too. I think it just comes down to how you use the tools, really.
Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like saying one way sucks and the other way is great is just, I just don't think it works that way.
No, they're different. It's apples and oranges. It's not a shitty apple and a great apple. It's like addition and subtraction are two different fruits, and you really just decide when to use them.
But not just that, it doesn't always, like, cutting 5 dB on one EQ won't always sound, like you say at 500, won't always sound the same as boosting everything else around 500 by 5 dB.
Yeah.
Because they'll react differently with different curves and at different volume levels. So the whole idea that boosting and cutting are the same thing, because when you're cutting, you're in essence boosting the stuff around it. Yeah, I guess on paper it's like that, but in real life, the gear won't behave that way exactly. So they sound different.
The other important thing to know when I did that was that I was using proportional EQs, which that's how the API EQs are designed.
Mm-hmm.
They're stepped. It's not like a continuous knob, so it's got very fixed points where the curves change as you step them, and even the gain affects the curve as well. So as you go higher, I think it gets wider or gets narrower, or one or the other. I'm not exactly sure, but proportional EQ is very good for additive EQ. And if you're really intrigued by this and you want to learn more about it and really get deep into the science of it all and how it would interact with the music, you should sign up for Nail the Mix, because that's kind of the stuff that we cover. And we walk you through it. You get to watch my computer screen. You can hear what I hear. And it's really like being a fly on the wall while we mix a song.
Fly on the wall that can ask questions.
Yeah. And so if you sign up to Nail the Mix today, you'll get a different song by Anakin, which is being mixed by Joel this month. But you can buy the back copy from March, where I did the Restart song with Chunk No Captain Chunk. It works just like a magazine subscription. You get what you pay for. So if you sign up today, you can still get back issues, but you got to pay separately for those.
You also get, though, we include one free month always, which is November 2015, which is a pretty intense, brutal song with Alex Rudinger on the drums and Frank from Suffocation doing guest vocals, and it's a band called Cognizance, and super extreme, super technical, awesome stuff. I did a guitar solo on it, and that's just included. And so, yeah, if you signed up today, you would get the Anakin song, which is the April song. But since you'd also carry over into March, because it's a 30-day subscription, into May, you'll get the May session, which we have a special guest coming in that I think you guys will absolutely love. Should we drop a hint?
You've heard
He's a friend of ours.
He's a friend of ours, and you've heard his stuff.
Yeah, it's hit number 1 in the billboards before.
Yeah, we'll announce it Tuesday,
Yep.
actually. So
that's your hint, though. You
Yeah.
know him and you love him, and we love him too. Okay, so next question, Bear Official Germany. Hey, Joey and Al, I really struggle with reverb for drums. So my question is, how do you set up your reverbs, particularly for snare? I think translation is probably something along the lines of, how do you get those massive snare rooms?
yeah,
That
well,
big snare sound.
the first thing I'll say is that I think a lot of people approach reverb with those Impulse reverb plugins.
God, I hate those so much.
I don't think they sound that good
No,
to me.
I don't either.
I'm a digital reverb guy. I really like digital reverb.
I feel like rooms sound like rooms, reverbs sound like reverbs, and when reverbs try to sound like rooms, they sound garbagey.
I mean, it kind of works. Like, I feel like it kind of works in the sense that I would be willing to put it into a video game or something. But like when it comes to a record, like, I don't know, it just doesn't quite work for my ears. I like digital reverbs. I'm famously known for using stock reverbs, and it's kind of funny, but I think it sounds great. And there might be something to the fact that I use the same reverb on the vocals as I use on the drum, as I use on this, as I use on that, and it kind of all blends in together. But I'll give you a tip, man. First of all, pre-delay is so important in reverb, because if your pre-delay is at 0, you're not going to get the sound that you want to hear in your head. The way reverb actually happens in real life is that it doesn't happen immediately. It happens after a few milliseconds. So that's what pre-delay is designed to do. It's designed to delay the reverb happening. I typically, for drums, I probably do around 70 milliseconds, but it also depends on the tempo. You don't want to do something that's like kind of offsetting from where your tempo's at.
Well, the higher the tempo, the less intense of a reverb and less of a pre-delay and you're going to want, because it'll just turn into a ginormous mess.
A jumbly mess.
Yeah.
Now, as far as getting that big, freaking awesome snare reverb sound that I guess I'm so well known for, is that I'm doing it, I'm basically doing it off to the side from everything else. It really has its own area in my mix. Like, I'm using a completely different snare sample. I'm using a reverb plugin only for that snare, and it has its own track, and it has its own compressor, and it has its own EQ. And so the snare reverb is like a completely different instrument. And then I might have a drum reverb that's like for everything else, but I have that snare reverb that's got its own track. And I really just do that because I have the maximum amount of control over how it sounds. I can go in, I can make it more compressed, I can make it have more treble, more low end, I can turn it up, turn it down, pan it. Like, really, I think that's the secret to behind it all, is that if you don't give yourself the options and the control level required to make it really jump out, then it won't happen. If you're just trying to do it with sends and stuff, it's probably more difficult. So
Yeah, sends are good for certain things, but I'm on the insert train more and more these days. So Devin Schmidt is asking, in situation where we're using a bass enhancer, like max bass on one or several low-end instruments within the mix, is it still beneficial to have a lightly used max bass on the master?
I've done that before.
It just depends, right?
Yeah, it depends. The thing that's great about max bass is it's like an expander, so it's ratio based. So you could have something that's really strong on the bass track, but then like really light on the master bus, and you can do that using the ratio setting. You can also change the frequency ranges. So maybe you want to do a little bit higher end on the kick to get it to poke through on laptop speakers, but then maybe you want to do it a little bit lower on the bass guitar because you want to fill in some sub area or something like that. It's not against the rules to use it twice if that's your main concern.
Should we pick a winner?
Yeah, let's pick a winner.
Okay.
And this is for the Twitter, the giveaway of the Producer Bundle 2.
All right. So let's see here.
We'll just pick someone at random because I imagine they probably didn't retype the...
Here's one. Jamie Gorovan. I'm writing a song with spaghetti strings and need me some good plugins. JoeySturgisStones.com. Joey Sturgis Stones. Jamie Gorovan, you won.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Send us an email to joeysturgistones@gmail.com and we'll hook you up today. We'll get you Producer Bundle 2. You can get started right away with making some sweet music.
Awesome. So, back to this. And congrats. So, next question is by Mark West. Which program is the best for using your cab IRs? I tried them in Waves IR-L. I couldn't get them to load correctly. Just curious on what plugin you drop them into. And I can tell you that the Waves one sucks. So that's why. Just, you can get the free one from Lapoo, or the Kazrog one is great. Like, either one of those will suit you just fine.
I tell you, my favorite one is the Reverence, which is supposed to be a...
That's a good one too, yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a reverb plugin, but if you set it right, and sorry, I'm not going to remember the settings right now. It's not in front of me. There's like 8 different settings you have to get perfectly right. But I think it's like you zero them out or something like that. It makes sense.
The Waves one is also a reverb one, but it's just not as good.
Yeah. If you have Reverence, it's a Cubase plugin, and you zero it out or whatever, and you get it set just right, it sounds really great for impulses. I love how it reads the impulses. That is a very important thing to understand, though, is that not, any 2 impulse loaders are not the same. They all have their own way of reading it, so...
Okay, so Andrew Page, who had the Amp Sim question, is using ToneForge. He didn't say which one, but...
Okay.
So how can he get his sound thicker?
Thicker?
With ToneForge, because he said it's sounding thin and harsh, but he's using a good DI and maximizing the input level.
Okay, so the thing that I would say about that is it could be... You could be fighting against your pickups. Like, you could be trying to use your pickups in a way that they weren't really designed to do. Like, for example, if you have a Fender Stratocaster with single coil pickups and you're going into ToneForge Menace, you're not going to get a fat sound. And if your tuning is in E standard, it's probably not going to be that great either. So let's say you're using a decent guitar, decent pickups, and it really is just the plugin itself. Try using the off-axis microphone. Sometimes some people, everyone has their own taste with guitar tone, right? Some people think like a condenser mic is like, yeah, that sounds beefy. But then another guy can come in and you show him the off-axis mic and he's like, oh, that's way better. So that's why those options are in there, because there really is no like one sickest guitar tone of all time, because so many people have so many different tastes with guitar tone. So I'd say try the off-axis.
Yeah. Chris Hummel's asking, what's your approach in working with programmed bass and there's no option to track real bass? Trillion and Subdestroyer. What about you?
Same. Trillion and Subdestroyer. Trillion's like the most realistic electric/acoustic bass simulator that we have, I think, on Earth right now.
I think so, yeah.
And it's expensive, but it's worth it. And then, Subdestroyer to simulate the low end, so that you can have that very smooth, perfect sine wave bass. Although, the low end on Trillion's not bad either. So maybe you can just get by with just Trillion.
Trillion's great. I feel like if you're doing the high-low bass thing, Trillion excels for the high, but for the low, I just think I like Subdestroyer better.
You know what? I'll say this. Trillion has a lot of built-in controls to change the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using those, it does not allow you to separate the low end. So that is a perfectly good reason why you would want Subdestroyer in that situation, is because you'd already have the MIDI data and you can just copy and paste it to a new track, run that into Subdestroyer, and since you're using the built-in controls on Trillion to like dirty up the sound, it's also going to dirty up the low end. So you can filter all that out with a high pass and then use Subdestroyer for all the smooth, clean low end, and that'll be a really good sound.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Gent Lover's saying, I've heard that you guys recommend low gain for distorted guitars. However, I'm getting a really gnarly and cracking sound with low gain. How can you combat this? I'm using Pod HD Pro. Really gnarly and crackling. Sounds like there's something else going on.
Well,
unless he's just so low that like it's at that point where if you pick harder, it gets weirdly distorted or something.
Well, one thing that could be happening, and I'm really just taking a shot in the dark here, is, okay, as you distort a guitar tone, right? Let's imagine like this is the sound wave. As you distort it, it actually goes like this a little bit. It becomes more like a block of audio, but it like shrinks down, okay? What could be happening is that as you lower the gain, you've got more dynamics in your signal. That means that there's going to be some audio peaks that jump outside of this like main range, where you've got like some audio peaks that come up here. When that happens, that could be hitting a clipping point somewhere in your signal and will create a cracking or popping type sound. This is the same thing that happens when you overload a microphone. It sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like a cheap speaker breaking.
Yeah, I'm also wondering how low gain he's going, because the only time I've heard that is when I'm using some amps sound good when you roll the gain down, like they're that versatile, like a Bogner or something sounds great like that. Some amps sound like garbage when you go for low gain, but what I think of as low gain is like classic rock, like old Black Sabbath sound that's barely got any distortion on it, like which is not what we mean for this. What we mean is more like gain at like between 4 and 6, rather than 9 or 10. We don't mean like gain at 2 or 3.
Yeah.
In general, right? Like it's not actually low gain. It's more like lower gain. It actually would be like medium gain.
I kind of also feel like this whole low gain tip thing really only applies to a select number of amps.
Yes, and it's not always true. Sometimes gain at 10 is awesome. You never know.
Like, I don't think I would do it. I would do it on like a 6505. I think low gain 6505 makes sense. Mm-hmm. It really kind of depends on how the amp was designed, I guess. So,
well, like for instance, a modded 800 with certain kinds of tubes, you would turn everything all the way up. or it'll just sound weak. So it all totally depends. But I mean, I just don't think that like low gain is what is meant by this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like actual low gain. It's more just people. It's like low gain for metal is more like it. Like I think there has to be that disclaimer that it's low gain for metal. It would still be way too much gain for other styles of music.
Yeah, if it's like a metal zone territory, then dial it back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The reason that people say that is because with certain amps, for instance, there comes a point where you're not adding more heaviness or distortion. You're just adding noise, like high-end noise. And then with other amps, players will use it, sometimes the same amps, but in other situations, players will use gain to mask bad playing. So there's just this idea that since tone comes from the hands mainly, that if you turn the gain down and you get rid of all that noise and you get rid of the masking, it's going to force the player to do a more honest and better job, therefore get a better tone. And it's a classic idea. Like it comes from the days of James Hetfield and like Testament and those Anthrax, the guys that are now grandpas, but like invented palm muting and heavy playing and are managed somehow to make E and D tunings sound heavy. If you think about back to that time period, just think about trying to make E or D sound heavy and not being able to tune to G to compensate. They had to compensate by playing really, really hard and super accurately. And so that whole low gain thing comes from that. Now you hear sounds with like gain all the way up and all that, and it passes for okay. But I guess in my opinion, the deciding line is when you're just adding garbage to the signal, or you're masking the performance.
Yeah, masking the notes as well.
Okay, so Mark Studios, are you a fan of riding the gain of the amp or tube screamer during a song? Yes, I've done that. Have you?
I've never done that. Well, I haven't rode the gain, but I've definitely automated it before.
Yeah, like in different sections, right?
Yeah, like a little more here, a little less there. Not really like riding it though.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I've not. No, definitely not riding it, but there's definitely like I was saying earlier about how some amps sound good in low gain or high gain. There's been some records where we just use the same amp for every section, but like a band like the Contortionists, for instance, have many different types of sections. So the gain knob went up and down and middle and down and up and whatever.
Yeah.
So Daniel Wellen is asking, how often do you use KickForge? I want it, but only to be able to use the Kontakt trial version at the minute.
Yeah, so if you have KickForge and you don't have Kontakt, it'll work for, I think it's up to 15 minutes before the demo runs out. You can save your session, reopen your session, the 15 minutes, start over. It's kind of annoying, but if you don't have the $500 required to get Kontakt, it's a way to work. And you can print it. So if you open your session and print your kick and close it, you're fine. You've got that printed kick sound there, and it's perfectly legal, to do that. And Native Instruments made that possible. As far as how often do I use it, I used it on Bless the Fall, the newest album. That's KickForge on that kick sound. So it's perfectly capable. I think another one would be The Family Ruin, actually. Check that record out, too.
Joel used it on the November Nail the Mix as well,
Yeah.
on the Cognizance, which everyone loved that mix. And by the way, yeah, if you sign up for Nail the Mix, you get November
For free.
For free. But yeah, he used it in that, so that's a good preview of how to use it. Here's an interesting one. I've got some thoughts on this one. I know you do too. Marius TCL is asking, what's the main concept for a good sounding lead tone for solos? Let me take this one first. As a guitar player who has recorded and played in a band with some of the guys that are worshipped these days, I can tell you that if they don't have it in their hands, and I know it's a cliche, but it's so true for lead guitar. if their vibrato's not on, if their consistency isn't there, if their picking isn't just right, you're going to be struggling quite a bit. There's something that a great guitar player brings to the tone that you can't get anywhere else. Like when Jeff Loomis bends something, it's right, for instance. When Jason Sukoff plays a solo, it's right. Like it is what it is. And you could put them through almost any type of gear and it'll sound great like them. Like I remember Yngwie was telling me that, and then he displayed this for me, that he would sound like himself through a Marshall Pignose amp. And then we went on his bus and he pulled out his Marshall Pignose, which is like, a little practice amp, and he still sounded like himself. So when you listen to your favorite records and you hear a great, like a truly great lead guitar player like John Petrucci, or like I said, Jeff Loomis or Yngwie or Jason Richardson, somewhat, I was just picking guys from different eras in different age groups who are just fucking awesome, or the guy that just joined Black Dahlia. You gotta understand that, like, if you hear these guys unplugged, they already sound awesome. Like, they are awesome. If you want another example of this, go to the Guitar Center sessions on YouTube and look up James Hetfield playing Battery. Not solos, but what you'll notice is that he's playing through camera audio. You're hearing camera audio through whatever shitty amp they gave him, and it still sounds like him. It still sounds great. That's the basis, in my opinion, for a concept for a good sounding lead tone. And then besides that, I feel like you need to take steps to differentiate it as much as possible from the rhythm tone. Different guitars, different amps, different EQ, different cabs. What do you think?
Yeah, for lead tones, I approach it from scratch. I don't copy my rhythm tone to the lead and then make some tweaks. I just start all over.
Yeah.
It really is always something that I kind of look at as like, the voice of the guitar. It's like a vocal. Like no two vocals are the same, no two leads are the same. It all needs its own little approach, and I also kind of like to get really creative with it. I'll make something that sounds like kind of nasally on purpose, or maybe something that sounds really wide and boomy, or I don't know. It just kind of depends on the lead, and I'll think about the note choices being made in the lead. I'll think about the frequency range in which it sort of lives in, and I'll like try to accent that and really make it something special. It is the moment that the guitar gets to speak, and so I try to make that voice very clear.
I think of lead guitar as a cross between the human voice and a violin on distortion, kind of fulfilling that role. So it's supposed to be emotive, but it's also pretty technical. And like Joey said, it's the moment where the guitar sings. So what that means is it's got to be differentiated enough to stick out, but also for it to be killer. Just like with vocals, killer in equals killer out, generally.
Yeah.
I mean, you can fix garbage vocals. There's a lot of tricks to do that, but they'll never be great, in my opinion. And he's asking about great. It's got to be great from the start. Jamie Gorvan is asking, what are your go-to effects for your guitar tracks? I'd like him to clarify that. It means
I'll say I think there are some go-tos for me in some cases. I do like to use the Leslie rotary type stuff for some leads. Obviously analog delay is really cool, and putting it before the amp is really cool. Basic reverbs, like cavernous type reverbs, to try to just add as much ambience to a guitar part as possible. Again, this is all just sort of like based on kind of one style of music, not something I would use on every song ever written. It's just kind of what I would use on like Asking Alexandria songs or something like that, which is what a lot of the work that I do really is. So
Gent Lover, the guy who was talking about the crackling problem on his guitars, and I think that this confirms what we were saying. The crackling happens in the palm muting stuff. So yeah, that's louder. It's got way more low end.
You're clipping somewhere.
Yeah. So it's happening. Probably too low on the gain or output or something. Okay. Douglas Hammersam is asking, what are you looking for when getting a good vocal tone while recording?
One of the things I always pay attention to is like, is this accenting the weakness? Because if it is, I'm not in the right spot. Like, let's say naturally a vocalist has a lot of this type sound. I'm going to look for a microphone that scoops that out and doesn't accent that. Or let's say somebody has a voice that's sort of sounds muffled like this. I'll look for something that's a little brighter. Let's say someone's vocals has a lot of S's in it. I might go for something that, prevents some of that S-ing, that S sound. So I try to contrast. This is actually the same way that I choose drum microphones. If I have a really bright room, I use a really dark mic. If I have a really dark room, I use a really bright mic. Just try to like really emphasize, I guess, the strengths and downplay the weaknesses.
Okay, so we're starting to run out of time here. Should we rapid fire?
Yep.
Last bunch?
Let's just do a couple
All right,
rapid
cool.
fires.
I'll rapid fire these to you. iPunk6655, can you give some tips for gain staging?
Use input trims.
Okay. Bear Official Germany, what is your approach on scream vocals? Do you prefer parallel processing? Do you do any parallel processing?
Sometimes with distortion, but most of the time not necessary, depending on the vocalist. Use Gain Reduction Deluxe to get ultra-saturated compressed vocals, which sound really awesome on screaming.
Okay, Ertugrul Gul is asking, I'm using Ozone 5 for mastering. I wonder what is the DC offset option for? Do you guys ever use it?
It's supposed to filter out everything below 20 hertz, and yes, you should use it because it gives you more headroom.
And you actually display how to use it on last month's Nail the Mix.
Yep.
March, Nail the Mix with Chunk No Captain Chunk. Joey goes through it. Dennis Landry. 1. Using Drum Force to trigger room samples. I assume turn down all the mics but the room mics. Yes, correct.
Yep.
2. You are normally triggering snare only or snare and toms and kick. Depends, right? Mm-hmm. You don't always want...
Never the same.
Everything. Yeah, you don't... Sometimes you want to print just a snare room. Sometimes you want everything in there. Sometimes you want everything but kicks. Just depends. Okay, Ruben Sanchez. Do you prefer room samples rather than reverb on drums?
Yeah,
but he says, when you don't have room mics.
You should have took room mics.
Yeah, don't not have room
It's not
mics.
a replacement.
Yeah.
Never will be.
Tips on using program drums like Easy Drummer or Superior? Yeah, get DrumForge. Diggity. Any suggestions for a Getty-style bass tone in a metal setting?
Getty style?
Yeah, from Rush, B standard. Well, first of all, Rush, I don't think they tune that low.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to hit the mark because of the tuning, but don't use if you're going after Rush, that's not like an Ampeg sound, is it?
No, I don't think so. And that's also, I believe he plays with his fingers. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So you're talking about a warm bass tone. It's like the opposite of all metal conventions. Like, just don't use anything metal. Don't use...
Here's the thing about using a cleanish, warm bass tone, is if you want to do it fine, but you're going to have to change everything else as well, because the moment you put something like that in a modern metal mix, it'll swallow it whole. It sounds really, really weird.
And it depends on what kind of metal, too. If you're doing Between the Buried and Me stuff, it probably fits in there. But if you're doing Decapitated, no.
No, definitely not.
Get out of there.
Lloyd1533. What are your thoughts on mixing of the new Deftone records, if you've heard it? I haven't heard it. But some people say that it's bad. Some people say it's good. I wonder if in 6 months they'll still say it's bad.
I don't know, man. I'm a big Deftones fan, and they've never disappointed me until this album. And
So you're on the bad side.
I sincerely mean that, because I love every single thing they've done until Gore. And Gore comes out, and I'm like, what the hell? But I think, they're probably in their 40s now, so they're kind of just going down to, that little 16-year-old me is not going to... I'm going to just have to keep listening to the records they made.
And 16-year-old them doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
those it's done. I feel like when an artist does something great, be happy they did it in the first place because it's a moment in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, if someone manages to do something great a few times, like wow, but don't hate them because they stayed alive or something. Because if you stay alive, you get older, and that's what happens.
I think the point of this, what I want to portray across this question is like, man, there's no like good or bad mix. There's just what the artist wanted, and hopefully they ended up with the mix that they wanted. We have no way of knowing that unless we ask them, but I'm just going to assume they did because they're a well-established band and they won't take no for an answer. So that's what they want their album to sound like. That's awesome. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a sucky mix. I might think it's a sucky mix, but it's the mix that's right for them, and that's great.
Okay, Victor Campus. Someday you develop some sampler player like Contact for your DF products?
Yes, that's under construction right now. In fact, our programmer is currently in the United States in our office working on it right now.
Okay, Simeon Bands. Can you describe the process for getting the rhythm and lead guitar tone on Tomorrow We Die Alive by Boo?
That is Lee's handiwork, actually. Lee McKinney made that tone, and it's Axe Effects. And when I mixed the record, I just used their tone because it was so good. I EQ'd it quite a bit, but yeah. In fact, I think, actually, you know what? We sold that tone for a while.
Yeah.
We don't sell it anymore because the Axe Effects is impossible platform to support. They change the firmware like every week, and we can't keep up with it. So, unfortunately, we don't sell it anymore, but I'm sure you can find it online. I bet someone torrented it or something.
Gent Lover, how to get clear and full drum sound. I'm struggling with choked drum sound. When I hear the word choked, I think too many mids.
Too many gates, I bet. You're probably using gates. Don't use gates. Manually do it. Go in and manually cut out the hits. You'll be surprised at how much different it is.
So that's your definition of choked? I see what you mean, like a cymbal choke or something.
Yeah, or maybe he's got his toms so gated that they just go, and not like doom.
See, I've always thought that when people say choke, they mean that it's like all mids, no highs, no lows, but...
Yeah, do you mean timing or do you mean frequencies?
Yeah, clarify that for us. Will Joey make How I Mix a Full Metalcore song? Haven't you done that?
I have done that, and
It's
if you would
called
like
Nail
to
the
get
Mix.
it, this is how you do that. Go to nailthemix.com, click join us today, sign up. It's going to cost $19.99 for the first month. You're going to get 2 songs. You're going to get April and November together. Then you'll go back to the section on the site that says previous stems. Go to December and buy the December month, which I think is an additional $25. So complete investment, what is that, 45? $45, you're going to get 3 songs that you can download and over 15 hours of video or something, plus 60 hours of podcasts. So it's really $45, 3 songs. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a nuclear bomb going off right now. Okay.
Lucas Klott. Advice on mixing fretless bass and death metal. Make sure it's in tune.
Yeah, and watch. Well, there's not much to watch on Jason Sukoff, but look at Jason Sukoff because he works on stuff like that.
I was there when Steve DiGiorgio was being recorded, who's a fretless player, and I mean, first of all, they got to be real good. They don't just do it because it's tough, and the tuning is everything on a fretless.
Pitch, just, yeah.
Yeah, that's literally everything because it's so hard to get an instrument that's supposed to be fretted to stay in tune without frets. So yeah. All right. Andrew Page, what's your go-to bus compressor for drums? I'll just say it's Kramer Pi, right?
I love Kramer Pi, yep.
Dro 4, what's your approach on resonance in layered guitars? Do you process every single track or apply processing on a bus group aux?
I'd probably try and approach the instrument itself first. Yeah.
Lloyd 1533, any technical differences between DAW in terms of sound?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Pan law is the only thing that changes the sound, but it doesn't change the sound. All it does is just change. It's a computer. You're telling the computer what to do. So if you set the pan law at 0, then it changes how the faders work and how the panners work. If you set it to -3, they're all different. So just do your research on what pan law is and figure out which one you want to use and what makes sense to your brain and how you like to work. I use equal power pan law. I think it makes the most sense. It tries to maintain the amount of power, quote unquote, as you pan something left to right and to the center. The reason why that's even a thing is because you have 2 speakers. You put a sound on the left-hand side. Now it's only coming out of 1 speaker. You increase the gain so that it sounds the same amount of volume as it did if it was coming out of both speakers, which is AKA center.
So Dennis Landry, have you ever used Ekisona's Drumatom? If yes, what do you think of it? It's okay.
Is that the no, that's not drum leveler.
No, it's not drum leveler. It's but it's supposed to take out the bleed between tom hits and do it fast, and I guess it works okay sometimes.
Is it the one where you have to process, or is it live?
I think it's live.
Okay, I've never used that.
It's been a long time. I don't quite remember.
I do detect silence on toms, but I'm working on a plugin right now, Sneak Peek. I can't tell you what it's called or anything, but it's going to do stuff for toms like that.
Diggity, favorite pickups for 7-string ripping metal? I like Seymour Duncan Nazguls a lot. What do you like?
For ripping metal?
What's
I don't
ripping
know.
metal?
I was an EMG kid for that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
those are great too.
But I like painkillers now, but that's really, I don't know.
And it's so different every time. Like painkillers are great too. I don't know.
Yeah. Painkillers are cool because they're passive, and they sound active, I guess.
That's what I like about the Nazguls too. But whatever, bro. Okay, so Gent Lover, back about the drum thing sounding choked. He said, in a full mix, the drums lose their clarity and low end, and if I add more low end, they sound even more mushy.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably down to source tones. A lot of the tips that we talk about when we talk about mixing drums and stuff, we're kind of assuming that you already have a pretty sick kick and snare sound. And what we're really talking about is like, well, then how do you go that extra 10% that you're really missing to like equal up to someone like me or Andy Sneap or something like that? But if your source tones are just garbage to begin with, a lot of this stuff's not going to help. So, I mean, one option you have is go take the Metal Recording Bootcamp by A.L. Levy, where he shows you, hey, did you know that turning this lug 2 cents this way is going to change everything, change your whole world, and how the microphone matters and all this stuff? Like, I would kind of go back to those roots and make sure that you're starting with something that can even be molded into where you're trying to go.
And just another word about that boot camp. It's available on creativelive.com. And I did it with the band Monuments. We recorded a song from start to finish, from pre-pro to mix. And yeah, the section on drums is quite intensive. I brought what my opinion is the best drum tech that I at least have encountered in the industry. And we get down and dirty with it. But it could also be that other stuff is masking his drum tones.
Yeah, you could have great drum tones, but you've just mixed them in a way to where they sort of disappear when all the elements come in. And, you know, I don't know. You could try JST Clip, which will essentially allow you to turn your drums up really loud without them going over 0. And so you're essentially distorting the drums. And I know that sounds weird at first, and you're probably reluctant to do that, but trust me, try it. It's awesome. Or Transify, which is a multi-band transient processor. You can really go in and add that missing sustain. You know, if you think it sounds choked and you want some more sustain out of it, there's literally a sustain knob on there. You just turn it and it gives you more sustain, and it sounds awesome. So check those things out.
Yep. And I think with that, we're going to conclude this Q&A. So thanks for showing up, guys. It's been a pleasure answering your questions, as always.
Yeah, thank you guys for dropping by, and let us know if you like this. Go to our Facebook and just write on our wall and just say, hey, the Q&A was really cool. I hope you do another one. Let us know that kind of stuff. Give us some feedback so we know if what we're doing is stuff that you guys like or care about. Because really, at the end of the day, we're just trying to do stuff for you guys to help you make really good music. Like that's really just the passion that I have, and I know Al has as well. And that's why we even make plugins in the first place. We just want to, plus it feels cool to be a part of all your music. Having JST plugins on all your songs makes us feel accomplished and like we did something important in the world. So
Yep.
let us know, man, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.